everybody. I am with Cherri Brunson. Cherri Brunson is the network administrator for Albemarle Regional Health Services and serves Northeastern North Carolina's regional HIV network of care. She is also a licensed missionary for the state of Virginia, and she leads HIV/AIDS prevention education workshops for churches and in the community. Today, she is here to help me kick off a week that some of us may not be aware existed. Starting this upcoming week is National Week of Prayer for the Healing of AIDS, and it runs March 6th through March 13th, 2022. And usually, as a rule of thumb, annually, it runs the first full week of March. This is an annual HIV awareness campaign that mobilizes faith communities and highlights contributions and impacts that congregations are making in HIV prevention, testing, direct service, and advocacy and community engagement. So, hi, Miss Brunson, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Christina. It is with great pleasure that I am here today and that you are talking about the National Week of Prayer for the Healing of AIDS. This is something that is very dear to my heart. So I am extremely honored to be a part of your program today.
Well, I'm extremely honored that you decided to come and to talk to us about this topic. So just starting off with the basics, can you explain in layman terms HIV and AIDS? What is that disease?
Absolutely. So layman terms of HIV is human immunodeficiency virus. It's a virus that damages or destroys the white blood cells in our body. We all have white blood cells. They are the fighter cells, the cells that are working really hard to help you when you get a cold or when there's some type of immunocompromised disease happening in the body. Those white blood cells are what we call our helper or fighter cells. So the HIV virus, it attacks those cells. And the way that an individual contracts HIV is through sexual contact, which can be vaginal, oral, or anal sexual contact, as well as intravenous drug use. So if someone is using drugs and they share their works, they are also susceptible to contracting the HIV virus. HIV is found in 4 body fluids, which include blood, semen, vaginal secretion, and breast milk. HIV no longer can be transmitted through a blood transfusion the way that it was in the early 90s, simply because they thoroughly test each and every blood donor for HIV, and individuals who are known HIV positive status cannot donate blood. If an individual does not know their HIV status and they donate blood, all blood donors are screened for HIV. And if their blood is HIV positive, it is not used in any of the blood banks worldwide. So you cannot get HIV from a blood transfusion in this day and time. And you also cannot, a mother typically will not pass HIV to her unborn child simply because all mothers who deliver children are tested for HIV as well. And that transmission is known as perinatal, which was very susceptible in the early 90s and early 2000s, but it's no longer transmitted that way.
Thank you so much for that information. That is really good information to know, especially the blood test. So if you're trying to give blood, like she said, they'll let you know your status if that's something that you're concerned about. But
absolutely,
as we segue just a little bit, I'm curious. When I was doing some research for statistics for HIV and AIDS to brush up on it, because this is that time of year that we start praying for it as a church, I saw that the demographics, I guess the targeted population demographics for the virus changed. What are some stats that we should know about as a community?
Sure, absolutely, Christina. That is a great question. So HIV is a disease that certainly we like to refer to it as a health disparity. That's why it is so important for the Black church, the African American church, to really take an interest in this because African Americans make up about 42% of all new HIV cases in the United States. That is really astounding when we in terms of the Black race, are 11 times at a greater risk than our counterparts, the white race, and nearly 3 times a greater risk than the Latinx community. And these were stats that were in the 2000, around the 2020. They're typically 2 years behind. And so 31% of this population are the Black males, while females make up about 11% of the population. So, remember I just referred to us as being the African American culture make up about 42% of all new infections of HIV in the United States. 31% of the population are the Black males, and 11% of the population are Black females. So over the past decade, HIV diagnosis, it has decreased by approximately 15%. However, the Black race is still the predominantly majority of individuals in the United States who are infected with HIV.
The stats are pretty alarming for sure. Being a Black woman, that just tells us that as a community and as a race, we really have to be informed, a little more informed. But what are the other stats for the other demographics of people that this virus affects?
Sure, absolutely, Christina. So as I previously mentioned, 42% are of the Black race infected in the United States. And then we have 29% of the Latinx community who are infected with HIV in the United States. The next would be 25% of the white race, and multiracial accounts for 2%, and Asian accounts for 1%, and then we have another 1% for other. So there is a huge difference between the Black race and the Latinx race, but there will be the 42%, and then it would jump to the 29%. So those are the stats as of 2021 that I have been able to retain from the surveillance data.
So we see with the numbers why this is so important, but can you let us know why this week of prayer is so important for the healing of AIDS in America?
Sure, absolutely. So Balm and Gilead established the National Week of Prayer for the Healing of AIDS in about 1989. This is something that initially was incepted in New York City, and when the AIDS epidemic was just that, an epidemic. There were hundreds of thousands of people dying who had been infected with HIV. So with this particular organization, they reached out to the Black churches throughout the United States because typically in the Black community, we know that our church does represent a place where we go for healing, a place where we go for education, a place where we go when we are wounded to, receive what we need to go back into the world. So I think that it is great that this has been established over 30 years ago, and it is still going very strong where pastors do get together. They have prayer vigils, they have the educational sessions, and they just show compassion and love to the community, letting individuals know what their worth is, who God created them to be. And education is very powerful. As we all know, knowledge is a must, it's very needful. People do perish because of the lack of knowledge. But when you have knowledge, you have the means that you need to go forward to protect yourself as well as to protect others. So the National Week of Prayer, I hope that there are more pastors that will continue to embrace it and will continue to acknowledge this week and participate in the prayer, in the education, in just showing a care in the fight against HIV. It is very important. HIV has not dissipated in the earth or in the world, in the United States. It is still here. It is growing, certainly not as rapidly as it was. We do know that recently there was a case where there was a lady in New York that there is currently no signs or symptoms of HIV in her body because of the stem cell treatment. So we're grateful for all of the wonderful scientists and pharmacists that have been about the cause of HIV and have come up with some wonderful things to help with combating the disease. But the fact is that it still does exist, and it still is a very strong stigma attached to HIV. But the Black church, I believe, is a wonderful platform, a great catalyst to help with breaking down the walls of external stigma as it relates to HIV disease.
Beautifully said. I love that, because I was going to ask, based on since they started 30 years ago and where we are now with the disease, with treatments, with education and prevention, I had to learn myself, and I did learn through a church that had an HIV prevention workshop that was held, and missionary Cherri was one of the speakers there. I learned a lot, and I learned a lot about how the stigma makes people nervous about talking about it or getting tested or asking questions. But why is it, as I segue, do you think it's so important? I know knowledge is power, but as far as age groups, for us to get rid of that stigma so that we can be healthy?
Absolutely. So I think that with the younger generation upcoming, they have not lived in a world. If a person is 30 years or younger, they haven't lived in a world where they have not known HIV. The world that they live in has always had HIV disease. So I think that for an individual such as myself, who's 40 plus, I am fully aware of the pandemic, the epidemic of HIV, where many people lost their life because of being infected with HIV, and then it developed into AIDS. And so this happened in the 80s, the 90s, even early 2000s until uh, there's wonderful medication on the market and people are living a very healthy, long life, HIV positive. It's no longer identified as a chronic or terminal illness. It's identified, as a terminal illness. It's identified now as a chronic disease. So I think with that said, the people that are 30 or younger, there isn't a fear attached to HIV. This is just another chronic disease such as diabetes or hypertension. However, it's the way that you contract HIV, which is 100% preventable. A person does not have to develop HIV, and I think that's where the church can come into play in terms of educating an individual about self-worth and self-love, to allow you to know that it's all about healthy choices and you have the ability to make that healthy choice, which is indicative in terms of the behaviors associated with someone who is at risk of contracting HIV.
Yes. Oh, yes. So, okay. So for everyone who's listening or watching this, how can they learn more? How can, if someone is a member of their church and they would like for their church to be given resources so that they can lead their own week of prayer, what are some ways that they can find that information?
Absolutely. So you can always go to www.balmingilead website, and they have wonderful resources for the church to download free of charge, and you can provide that information to your congregation. Um, I think that that is a wonderful resource. And you know, if you're interested in this, which I hope that we will get more churches and more individuals interested in this movement, because it, again, it is 100% preventable, and knowledge is absolutely powerful. And you know, when you apply the knowledge that you have, then that is just, that can save a life, literally. Another way to get information is you can absolutely contact me. I'm with the Albemarle Regional Health Services, and our website is www.albemarle regional health services, or you can look me up on the web, and I will be happy to provide you with any information as it relates to HIV. And I'm also available for workshops in your church, educational workshops as it relates to HIV. And we also provide rapid HIV testing. In North Carolina and in Virginia, it would be Access AIDS, which would provide HIV testing. And Christina, if you don't mind me sharing with the community this upcoming, well, in March the 11th, which is a Friday evening at Greater Faith Worship Center, which is located in Suffolk, Virginia. It's a church that we have been doing HIV education and counseling and testing there for over the last decade, in conjunction with Access AIDS of Norfolk, Virginia. So we will have a program there on Friday, March 11th at 6:30 p.m. It's free and open to the public. We do invite you to come out and join. If you like more information, you can absolutely call 252-287-6484, and we will be happy to give you more information. And then on the Saturday, which is March 12th, we will be at Greater Faith Hampton, Virginia, providing HIV education and testing to the public free of charge in conjunction with Access AIDS. And that service will be at 11 a.m. on Saturday, March 12th. So please do share the information and come out. I do encourage each and every individual, if you have never taken an HIV test, get tested, know your status. If you are HIV positive, there is treatment. Early detection is the key to living a healthy, long life with HIV. If you are HIV negative, you know what you need to do to continue staying negative. Prevention is 100%, and the choice is yours.
Awesome. And no, of course, I do not mind you plugging that. That's good. So, for everyone, the churches were Greater Faith Worship Center. And just because I'm familiar with the church, the address is 4633 Sleepy Hole Road, Suffolk, Virginia. And Greater Faith Hampton, that address is 2911 Shell Road, Hampton, Virginia. And I'm going to try and share that information on the Shine Strong Live Long Facebook page so that you all have access to that, because it's really important that, you know, if you're a child of God and you pray, this is a national week where everybody is given the opportunity to pray together for the same thing. And so thank you so much, Missionary Cherri Brunson, for coming on today to share that valuable information with us.
Absolutely. It is with great pleasure, Christina. Thank you for having me. And I do commend you for just allowing this opportunity to be brought forth on your show, because, again, it is very important and it is something that does certainly target the Black race at 42%. So we want to ensure that our upcoming generation, that they know what HIV, it is still very prevalent in the US. However, it is 100% preventable. Knowledge is power. Thank you so much, my sister.